It's Wildcat 6305 coming at you from Ike's Treehouse, formerly outside of Augusta, Georgia. And from my last video, if you remember, I announced that I was relocating to outside of Atlanta, and so been several months have passed now, and we're there. And so now in the new house, got one of the extra bedrooms set up as a game room. So here I am upstairs, and I feel like the treehouse name fits even more. So I have Global War 36 through 45 set up, and about to start playing a game with it. But before I get in and start filming videos and stuff for it, just kind of wanted to give a prelude video of what my thoughts are and kind of go over some of the house rules that I have. So one of the things so here's a list of the expansions that I'm playing, just so you can get a better sense of some of my house rules, where I'm coming from with things. Understanding what expansions I am playing with is probably probably key to that. So I don't want to read the entire list, but really, I mean, a lot of them that are available on Historical Board Gaming. You can see it there, even some of the newer ones. I went ahead and wrote in the Canada expansion, despite the fact I haven't seen the rule set on it. Taking some guesses on that one to what it's going to be, so we'll see how right I am. But a lot of stuff in play. War Plan Z, Spanish Civil War, Turkey at War, railways, forts. So looking forward to it. It even included some of the Special Forces rules. I haven't bought that set yet. I haven't really gotten my head around the rule set yet, so I haven't purchased it. But some of the rules that I was already anticipating using for some of my commando troops, some of my Special Forces troops that I was kind of putting in. So I was considering like the commandos per se, and some of the elite forces that are already kind of built into the base game. I was adding some rules for them, and so just kind of and some of the written rules for the Special Forces expansion mirrored what I was already coming up with. So they're going to be using the raiders and the garrison rules from that for the commandos. But other than that, I will mention where I'm making tweaks to the expansions as I come across it. But if it's kind of minor, or some of the tweaks that I feel like I've made or that I'm making to them are kind of, well, if these 3 planets align, then I want to tweak that rule. So if it's something like that, I probably won't mention it, but it is written in my rule set. And this rule set, by the time I'll post a link to it in the video, or at the bottom in the description of the video. But you're looking at 0.1. It's probably going to be something different by the time I get it posted, because I've already thought of how I wanted to rearrange some stuff in here anyways. But it's a start. The other thing that I'm doing is some early adaptations or adoption of some of the version 3 rules, such as the terrains. I'm planning on playing with the desert and the jungle terrain rules. And I've marked this on my map by these orange stickies and the green stickies, so it looks really awesome on my map. But when I heard those rules, I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I want to add that in. Naval screening, I feel like that's kind of almost a natural progression rule there. And then some of the facilities that they moved around, I went ahead and moved some around. I'm not playing with the extent of all the naval facilities that they're adding, but essentially I added a few more naval ports and a couple of different and I think a couple air bases as I saw them through the live streams and stuff of those locations changing, and I was like, hey, that's a good idea. So that's where the facility placement, some of those minor changes are. Okay, so the first big original idea that I'm injecting here is supply tokens or munition chips. Haven't really set on a name, but I think I'm just going to stick with supply tokens since they say supplies on them. But as many of you, I have poker chips rather than getting the I Will Never Grow Up or the historical board gaming poker chips. I just got normal poker chips, and so I'm just saying 1, 5, 10, 20, 50, and I figure 50 should be as high as you ever need, right? Probably higher. But essentially what I'm saying is with the IPPs and everything that's going on in the game, I feel like there are some things that IPPs are kind of more of a strategic thing as far as what you're buying and purchasing with IPPs affects many turns or something that has a life, whereas some of the things, such as you saw, I was playing with the ordnance packages, with the ordnance expansions. Some of those ordinances give you a +1 on one dice roll for one combat only, and to have that +1 advantage for one battle to cost 4 IPP when you could turn around and buy specialty infantry instead of, or artillery, that just kind of seems a little high for me. So what I'm saying is supply tokens are equal to 1 IPP. And so you'll buy supply tokens with IPPs, but you can only buy supply tokens. You can't buy IPP with supply tokens. And then also playing with the oil rules, you can buy supply tokens with an oil as well. And so what my thought process here is say in the ordnance rules, if ordnance costs 3 IPP, well now that's 3 supply tokens here. So you only have, so you'll spend 3 supply tokens, so that's like 75 cents per se. And some of the other things that I have spread out to, playing with the partisans rule. So when you send partisans a supply, rather than, oh, I sent 1 IPP for a bonus to a partisan when I'm hardly wanting to spend lend at least 1 IPP to my ally, that it's kind of hard to justify that. So I think maybe just lowering the cost of supply tokens, or making supply tokens a part of the money, so you get 4 supply tokens for 1 IPP. That to me, that's a little more digestible and isn't that much of a thing. So we'll see how that breaks. But like I said, you can't buy IPP or oil with supply tokens. You can only buy supply tokens with IPPs or oils. It's not a oil money laundering scheme, because I am playing with oil rules, or with the Oil Wars expansion and those oil rules. So I'm trying not to break the game too much and trying to repair, in my opinion, some of the oil war rules and making oil more important. So this is going to be an important concept, the supply tokens, because I'll be covering that in some of my other videos, and some of my other house rules are going to be impacting supply tokens. Next kind of minor adjustment that I have, also playing with fighting railroads. So and I'm leaving it mostly how it's written, but a couple of changes, damage rail and rail, of course a rail track in case you don't have the fighting railroad expansion. A piece of rail is 4 IPP and it's 8 if it's going through the mountains. But then you also have armored train. Keep wanting to say armored car. Armored train. So if I say armored car, you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about armored train here, not the armored car piece. Assault, artillery, and flat cars. So with the train rules, with strategic rail movement, you're supposed to non-combat move into a territory you held at the beginning of the round. So if you captured a territory, you can't move into that with strategic rail movement. So that's pretty much the rule, so that's the rule as it is out of box. Well, the armored train will allow you to strategically rail move one unit on a combat move. So the armored train, they can take it in there, and so you can move somebody from across the board into that battle. And let's see, the cost. Let's see, I thought I had it in front of me. It costs 10, and yeah, it costs 10, and so it allows one unit to move. The assault car, not to be confused with the armored car, the assault car allows you to non-combat move somebody into a territory that you just captured. So it's not necessarily, so you can't combat move, but to non-combat move into a new territory. The artillery, if you have an artillery car, you can pair it with an armored train car, and then when you pull that armored train car in, it acts like an extra artillery coming in. And then the flat car, I'm saying it gives you a +1. So if your track capacity is 2 and you have a flat car, then that just gives you a +1 capacity for that rail essentially. But you do need to move the token around. So that flat car, if you moved it over from the Pacific Ocean in Russia and you moved it all the way over to Poland, well, then it's in Poland the next round. You can't just move somebody back. So kind of got to go from there. But that is what I've done with trains. And the cost for those, let's see, are 10, 6, 5, and 5. All right. Okay, the next change to facilities that I'm doing is adding in airfields in addition to air bases. So having two different types of air facilities. So essentially, where an air base costs 2 rounds at 5, and you can scramble 3 planes, and it gives a +1 movement bonus to all planes, the airfield is going to cost 5, scramble 1 plane, and give a +1 only to fighters and tactical bombers. The other house rule that I've added in that makes airfields more useful is that I'm saying that large planes, so medium bombers and above, cannot land on islands without an air facility in place. Because really, I feel like that's maybe kind of more from a historical perspective of, in the Pacific, they were island hopping so they could get airfields in range so we could bomb Japan. So with the airfield, that's what I'm going with here. Is the airfield will also allow strategic bombers and medium and above to land on an island without having to spend 10 IPP to build an air base. So that's really kind of the root of it, but it also has some other benefits with it as well. Okay, the next thing I got is I'm playing with the U.S. Marines expansion. So part of that is there are combat engineers in the Marine expansion. So I've bought some extra tokens from combat engineers and some CBs. So those are going to be the U.S. engineers in the Pacific. But combat engineers are available for all nations in my rule set. And in addition to the rules listed in the Marine rule set, I'm also, with supply tokens, you can buy and deploy minefields, both land mines and sea mines, and deploy bridges. So essentially, the mines are going to be 2 supply tokens, or half an IPP, but 2 supply tokens to deploy a minefield, and they have to be deployed by an engineer, or a sea mine can be a naval mine can be deployed by a destroyer as well. But they have to be in that same zone. The other thing is bridges. So I'm letting combat engineers, they can sit out. So if you have a river combat, you can buy a bridge for 3 supply tokens, and they can apply it over that river, or they can deploy it over a river. They have to sit out that first round combat because they were essentially busy building the bridge. But then 2 units can cross this bridge without suffering a river penalty. The patrol boats are, they pair with 1, so it's kind of just an extension of the patrol boat in a way. That's what I'm playing with now. I haven't really decided if the bridge is permanent or temporary. I may start out with it being permanent, and if it seems like it's an issue, I may start out with it being permanent, and then you can bomb it and blow it up, and then you got to rebuild it. So I don't know. We'll see. But like I said, the engineers. So using the kind of the base rules out of the Marine set, but then also added some ability to where they can deploy these with supply tokens. Also for use with supply tokens are going to be the sabotage feature, and I'm putting these on like the Commando, Rangers, Special Forces units, not to be confused with the Special Forces expansion that's out now. But essentially anything that's like Commando's an airborne and a Marine, so they can drop in behind or like Elite Airborne, so they can go in and say you drop them in ahead of time where there's fortification, expend a few supply tokens, and then they can attempt to sabotage and blow up the fortification prior to a landing. So if you drop in, so if you make an airdrop into an area, they can try to take out that fortification prior to an amphibious assault, or what if it's a coastal gun or fort or whatever. So I just have these tokens out here, the Commando and the Rangers. I'm kind of using the Rangers as that Commando unit for the U.S. And so I think that'll be kind of a fun expansion. I'm kind of curious to see how that works, or how that plays in. Okay, so fortifications and kind of special things. Not really changing a lot of stuff that's out of box. However, just adding in, I just wanted to show some of my stuff. So out of the fortification expansion, which is an older one, it kind of seems like it was probably written more towards 39 than it was 36. But you have the Germans have the ability where if they have a battleship that gets destroyed, and if you don't feel like repairing it, you can turn it into a coastal gun. So that's what this gun is, and I think historically it's supposed to go in like Norway. Norway up there. These are my fortifications that I have from my out-of-box fortifications. I just spray painted these up. They look similar to pillboxes. They're not the nice Shapeways pillboxes, but they do about the same. And then this is the old AA gun from the original Axis and Allies edition. I've modified these to be my coastal guns. And then these two right here are the bunkers that you can get from HVG. Those are going to be my Atlantic wall pieces. So in the fortification expansion, you can, I think it's like 30 IPP. I think it's like 6 turns of 5. I could have gotten that backwards, but I think it's like 6 turns of 5. And then you progress, and then you can deploy an Atlantic wall fort on, if you're the Germans, you can deploy an Atlantic wall fort along every land zone that borders the Atlantic at the time, because historically the Atlantic wall went from Norway to Spain. And then the only real house rule that I came up with here is the Intrenchment Chip. Essentially, the little backstory on this, I made these entrenchment chips when I was modifying some of my Global 40 rules to incorporate Der Kunstler's, DK's entrenchment rules into Axis and Allies. So I have all these chips made up, and I decided they're too good to waste. So these are essentially half a fortification. So whereas your fortification costs, two turns at 5, so 10. This one you can deploy right away at 5. And then instead of, and then it still does the combat, but it's less than what a fort would. But it can't, needs an engineer to be constructed, and let's see, and it doesn't take any damage, so it won't stick around like a fort. However, it can be upgraded to a fort, so kind of a good in between there. Okay, so my next set of house rules, or the next item on my house rules, are what I'm dubbing them my Hogan's Heroes MASH set here. And essentially, it's taking in I'm using the POW camp, the hospital, the combat medic, and the hospital ship. And essentially, post-combat, both sides so you either roll to see if you rescued or saved, healed any of your troops, and then you also roll to see if you captured any enemy units. And so each city is naturally a hospital, but then you'll have to build POW camps to be able to activate POWs. And so the POWs have a range of 5 and a capacity of 5. So if you have a battle within 5 zones of a POW camp, you can roll to see if you captured any POWs. And if you did, then you can put that nation's roundel underneath the POW camp, and then for each prisoner you will make 1 supply token per round, per turn, so up to 5 supply tokens. So which is kind of similar to General Hand Grenade's house rule with what he was doing with the POW camps. But I just kind of felt like giving it an entire IPP was a lot, because what exactly are you going to be having POWs do? Move piles of rocks back and forth. But anyway, so that's what I'm doing with POW camps, and then also with the partisans. Once your nation, so I don't have this set up, but say the Russians have a POW camp and they captured Germans. So now in that Russian territory, the Germans can roll for a partisan inside that territory because they have their prisoners, their people are in that camp. And so as long as you have a prisoner of war in that camp, you can roll for partisans, all the normal partisan stuff with that, but then also an added partisan ability is a prison break. And that one has a high failure rate. I think it's like 8 or above is where you'd fail on a prison break. And I think the success is 1 or 2. And if that happens, then you can free the prisoners of war out of that camp, and then everybody goes back to the nearest hospital, and partisans are taken away. But hospitals, kind of in that same sense, post-combat, you roll to see how many out of the casualties you had, you roll to see how many people you saved, rescued, however you want to term it, and also when you're rolling for POWs, that's going to be for every 2 enemies that you had. So if they came at you with 2 and you took them both out, then you have 1 roll for POWs. But with rescuing your guys, that's going to be per unit you had. And as I was saying, every city inherently has a hospital in it. So if you're within the territory that has a hospital or 1 territory out, then you can roll for to see if you rescued any of your casualties. If not, you'll need a combat medic. And a combat medic, so the hospital, you can build a hospital outside of territories that don't have cities. They cost 3 IPP. PAL camps cost 5. Hospital ships cost 2. And the combat medic costs 1. Now, these 2 tokens, these are just things that you place under either an infantry or a transport ship. And so these are just kind of modifiers to that one ship. So if that ship goes or if that unit goes, then they're gone. And you also can't upgrade, but of course it won't be an issue for transports as much as it will be your infantry that you put under. They can't be upgraded to something else. If they're a medic, they can't be upgraded to motorized, or if one of the elite units or something like that. If they're a combat medic, they're a combat medic. So if you're outside of range of a hospital, you can build combat medics to move along with your troops, to place under one of your infantry, and then they can rescue troops as your battle progresses. And once you save somebody, once you heal a casualty, save a casualty, then you'll take that infantry, or whatever type of infantry you have in that battle is what you can put. So if you had nothing but standard infantry, you can't put a Marine in. You can't save a Marine. He wasn't there. But if you had Marines, then you can save a Marine. But you take that piece and you'll put him on the second stage on the production chart. So then the next round, they'll progress, or so then the next turn, you can place that unit that's on the second stage at any hospital location, and then they can be moved from there. So you can't just put them back where they were. They don't go to a factory to count toward your production. You don't have to pay for them, but they go to a hospital to be discharged from a hospital, if you will. And then the hospital ships are kind of a combination of the combat medic and the hospital. So the hospital ship, you put it under your transport, and if it's near a coastal area that you control, then you can deploy that infantry to that territory from the hospital ship. Or it will also act like a medic in the circumstance of amphibious assaults. So you can assault, and if one of the transports has the hospital ships, then you can make your save rolls there. So I feel like I said, I'm calling this my Hogan's Heroes MASH expansion. So hopefully this will be fun. I may need a little tweaking on it, but I'm thinking this is going to be a good addition here. Okay, so the last thing I'm adding, or the last thing I have set up, rather, to show you is the torpedo net. So I saw these tokens on HPG's website, and it got me thinking about what to do with them, because it looked really cool, and trying to figure out how I wanted to implement that. So what I came up with was saying that it is a defensive bonus. So they cost 3 supply tokens, and you can deploy it on any surface ship. So whether it's cruiser, battleship, destroyer, or one of the new ones in between: battle cruiser, heavy cruiser, light cruiser, all that stuff. So what they're going to do is they're going to act as a defensive bonus. So if you're attacking somebody, it doesn't apply. But if you're set up and you're being attacked, your Navy's being attacked, then on a hit that is a 2 or greater, you can assign the hit to the torpedo net. So it sounds a little convoluted. However, I think it's actually going to play kind of easy. So right here, I have a little example set up already ahead of time. By the way, this is like my 3rd or 4th video, my attempt at making this video. So now I kind of got things a little bit more oiled out, I think. But say you got this little battle here. The Japanese moved in and they're attacking this cruiser. Well, 2 of them just flat out missed at 11, and then one of them hit with a 2. Well, normally that would just hit the cruiser, it's done. But with the torpedo net deployed, well, now the American can assign the torpedo net to the cruiser. So now we move the torpedo net out of here. You have one more round of combat. So because, I mean, hopefully this isn't breaking it. I may have to reevaluate, but I feel like with all the offensive munitions that are being added in, that you probably should have some type of defensive munition added in as well, because really this is going to be one hit. I mean, this is just going to extend combat one round, and you can't repair it. You're going to have to rebuild it. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But however, the other thing I said, a 2 or above. So let's put this back. So say still 2 of them missed, but one of them was a 1. Well, then the torpedo net can't stop a 1, and so then that's a hit. The cruiser's gone. So you still kind of have that little bit of a factor where it's not quite a capital ship because it can't take 2 hits. It's just you're assigning a 2 or greater, so kind of a less dead, or kind of a less accurate hit, I guess, to it. So, but the 1 is theoretically, they had the money shot and missed the torpedo net. Or, this is kind of a running version, or it may be something, or I may end up saying that's just for subs. We'll see how it plays out. But right now I'm just saying all ships, because I don't know. Got to do some play testing with this, and all these rules. Really, I probably should have said that in the beginning. I'm play testing this rule set, and kind of excited to see where it comes, or where it's going to go. So one thing, as I was saying earlier, is I'm playing with Oil Wars, and so with that, one of the things that I'm trying to incorporate is what I'm calling joint use facilities. So if you have, so as in normal global war, if you can't use your ally having a naval base somewhere or air base somewhere has no benefit to you. Well, with Oil Wars, what I'm saying is joint use facilities, if you pay 1 oil to the bank, then you can use their air base or naval base as a +1 for you. It's not going to that other player, because really what it is, because that'd be cross-subsidizing, really. So you're just, in essence, paying it to them. So if the U.S. uses a UK air base, they're paying that oil to the UK, but it's going to the bank to cover the cost that they incurred to having their ship, the U.S. ships there, if that makes sense. So that's how I'm kind of saying that. So joint use, we'll see how that goes. I'm even saying, and this one may really be a game breaker, so I may have to take it out, but I'm even saying joint use factories, but it uses up production slots. And where I'm thinking of this is more with these guys right here, playing with the Netherlands Fight Back. They're going to have to build a factory to build anything above infantry here. So what if they had an agreement to joint use using the factory in Calcutta? Now granted, that's not a lot. We'll probably have to upgrade it and all that kind of stuff. But if they could pay an oil to use this, and then it detracts one of the production slots. But of course it's got to be, the owner of the facility has to give permission. So this would be one of those times right there. But I'm kind of curious to see how that would affect the game, because you're already taking a nation that doesn't have a lot, and now you're making them save up for a factory. So hopefully, I'm kind of curious to see how that plays out and see how well that does. So yeah, like I said, I was really thinking of this situation when I came up with that rule, but we'll see what other situations, what other scenarios come up where it's like, oh yeah, I need to take that back out. And moving back up to Calcutta, one thing, and a lot of the next rule sets I'm going to be talking about are really general hand grenades and rank carcasses, house rules that I'm adding in, because when I heard them say it, I'm like, that makes too much sense not to play with it. So medium factories, should have gotten a chip out, but I use the rank carcass method, and I have purple chips showing advanced and white chips showing light. So here I have, as an example of this, I have a white chip underneath this carrier and sub. So that's a light carrier and a coastal sub. And that's a torpedo boat destroyer underneath this destroyer that's flipped over there. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing. And then conversely, I'm using purple chips to show upgrade or advanced. So here I would put a purple chip underneath that medium factory or underneath the small factory to show that he's a medium factory if we were to upgrade it. And as I was saying earlier with the joint use, that's probably something that they're going to want to try to do, is upgrade that factory to a medium factory. Since we're hanging out here still, also going to use Rank Carcass's Netherlands income increase rules. I thought that made sense too. And I replied on General Hand Grenades on one of his videos the other day, talking about the whole scenario with Japan, of having the Japanese come down and take out the Dutch East Indies, and then what to do with it. And you know, I am biased to my idea. I do understand his thought in saying that the Americans need to roll, because that's really ultimately what you need, is the Americans to get into the game sooner. However, I still feel that that would be a big interest to the Commonwealth. And so if them attacking gets ANZAC and the FEC to full income, then I think they should be able to declare war on the belligerent that caused that. So if Japan attacked the Dutch here and that caused their incomes to shoot up, they should have the ability to declare war on Japan, and them only. Necessarily, you know, not necessarily, oh well, they can't declare war on anybody, but just on Japan, and that would kind of free them up a little bit to be able to do something, because essentially you have the Netherlands, or you know, the Dutch East Indies that are going to be taken, and Japan's just going to be camping out for 5 years until somebody can try to take it back. I'm not saying that's a good strategy. Don't get me wrong. I'm talking about the rule, not necessarily the strategy. I think it would be a good rule to allow that flexibility for them to be able to do that. Whether that's a good strategy for them to declare war on Japan, probably not a great idea, because then that's going to affect the U.S. income. But however, just like I think having the option there available could make the Japanese player think twice, because without it, why would the Japanese player not attack this? If at least he can think there is some repercussions, and what is that going to do? Or maybe it will make him attack it sooner, because then he can attack the rest of them. But you know, that's just my thought. Like I said, not necessarily a strategy that I would stand behind, but I like seeing options and flexibility and rules and being able to do things. I don't like being tied up and not being able to fix something. Okay, so I wanted to get over here for the only transport plane on the setup right there in Germany. And I think I have a naval transport over here off the coast of Canada. But two little transport rules, minor rules I'm changing. The air transport, I should probably set it down back over here so you can see the air transport. But I'm saying the air transport can carry 2 infantry, just kind of make it a little bit more useful. And then I'm also saying that I'm using the bloodbath rule, transport rule of 2 transports can have 1 die roll at 1. Don't think that's major game breaking there, but I think that'll be a good thing. The other thing, and I've already kind of, as I said earlier, this is my multiple attempt on the game, on making this video. So I've already rolled my tech rolls for each nation here. So that's the general hand grenade house rule roll, or house rule of where you roll for a tech before the game. I think that's a great idea. Helps speed things along. I also added a tech, naval gun, so I'm not playing with battleships or supercarriers or attacking transports or anything like that. But I did add naval guns, and what the naval guns is going to allow, that's not where I wanted to set it up. So the naval guns, yeah, I'll show it on these ships. That will allow a +2 to shore bombardments. And because, I mean, shore bombardments are kind of low anyways. But the other thing that I've added to the house rule is cruisers. I'm saying that cruisers have a special ability to act as anti-air, and whether that's accurate or not, cruisers have the ability to act as anti-air. So base, they can roll 1 die, like you can choose. You have to declare, is that cruiser going to be anti-air or a cruiser? And if he's anti-air, then he can roll 1 dice at 3. Well, I have it in my hand. No, I don't. He can roll 1 dice. Let me get it so I just don't get it wrong, what I'm saying. I thought I had the sheet in my hand and I didn't. My bad. All right, so cruisers, you can roll 1 dice and at 3 hit an aircraft. With the naval guns technology, that will increase them to make him a normal anti-aircraft gun, normal AAA. So he'll roll 3 dice, up to 3 dice per aircraft, and just like a normal anti-air. And oh, I'm sorry, and the transport, the bloodbath rule that I was just talking about with the transport, that's where I come out with the naval guns, is with the naval guns expanded, with the naval gun technology, then you can, for every 2 transports, have 1 dice roll. So I misspoke there. Okay, so mentioned using some rank carcass rules. Mentioned his income increases for Netherlands. Also, I want to play with his alignment rules for the Chinese. So essentially, all the semi-autonomous will align CCP rather than align KMT. So playing with those rules in effect, and also playing with his War Plan Z, because I feel like the War Plan Z, some of the wording wasn't, I didn't feel like it was worded correctly, and I felt like RC's interpretation of the wording made more sense. So I'm using his War Plan Z along with that. One other thing that I'm doing with tech is I'm saying you can lend-lease tech. So let me show the tech board there. So let me get over here. So as you can see, it's multi-stage production of tech. So what I'm saying is that if you're on one stage, you can lend per stage up to one less stage that you're on to an ally. So that's very wordy, and that's not the way I have it written, but that was the wordy way I just chose to explain it right then. So essentially the Russians here, they're a complete heavy bomber. So they can lend stage 1, 2, and 3 to any of their allies. They can't lend stage 4, but so it'll help some of the technology rolling if you lend lease it. So, and it's subject to all the normal lend lease rules. However, instead of on the interception, if there's boats or whatever that can intercept lend lease, rather than it blowing up and going away, if you intercept the technology, then you get that stage, or you get to add the stage. So not necessarily stage 2. So if you were lend leasing a stage 2 to somebody and they don't even have a stage 1, then it's stage 1. But essentially that's a way for everybody. I think that'll be kind of fun, little house rule of technology there. Okay, last but not least, the last little amendment that I'm doing here. I'm calling it the economic stimulus plan. So whatever your base income is, I'm giving you 150% of it. So if you're the Germans and you're at 20, then your income, not including your bonus income, but your income would be 30. So half of 20 is 10, 10 plus 20 is 30. So 150%. And doing that for each of the nations. Because I feel like with the amount of expansions that I'm adding, whether if it's War Plan Z for the Germans, whether if it's Sea Lion for the Germans and the UK, whether if it's the ordnance, the chemical ordnance, which there's one under that guy, but what if it's the ordnances, because a lot of the plain ordnance packages need technology. So you're already, like per technology, you're a minimum of 8 IPP per technology, and a lot of the ordinances require a technology to be able to use it. Let me just set this down right here. So I feel like you need more money, and the base game, I feel like as you add more and more expansions, that's great, but you have more and more things to spend your money on, and yet there's not an expansion that gives you more income. And I think just kind of a base, without really trying to mess around too much on messing up the numbers or renumbering territories or any of that type of stuff. I just wanted to make a quick, easy, overarching, say, hey, whatever your base is, take half, add half of your base, rounding up. And, hopefully we'll see how that goes. I was thinking just double it, but then I started thinking, whoa, that might not be a good idea. That may completely break it and derail the whole thing. So, but yeah, that's what I'm looking at is doing this economic stimulus, and I think it'll be good. So I'm hopeful for it. And then there's also some little items like I was saying earlier that if it comes up, I'll cover it, such as. Like over here in North Africa with the desert rules, I have Africa Corps expansion that I'm planning to play with. If the Germans activate the Africa Corps and bring them into North Africa, then I'm saying that the Africa Corps is not subject to the desert effects. And conversely, I also have a British tank division markers with the desert rats. So when the Africa Corps gets activated, the British get the desert rats, and the desert rats aren't effective to the, they got one battalion that's not desert train rules effective. So, but that's what I got. I wanted to make that quick video to kind of show all the different stuff I got going before I got started, because I didn't want to get in the middle of it and what's all the stuff you got. So I'm planning on doing kind of short segment videos and put them together as one. So I'll have like, January 38, and I'll have all of them, and I'll just kind of do a summary. My plan right now at the moment is not to just turn the camera on and start talking and you watch me babble around and stare at the board for an hour and a half while I'm figuring out a turn. I figure I'll just go in and it'll be more of a, here's what happened, here's what the Germans did, here's what the Russians did, here's what they're thinking to do next turn, and kind of go from there. But anyways, hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, stay safe and wish you the best of luck.